Hi, Proton.
Yes, I'm here.
Windows down.
Opening front row.
Okay. Okay, terima kasih. Hi, Proton.
What's up?
Window up.
Closing all areas.
Hi guys, I am driving the new Proton Persona facelift, and driving this car, it has sort of triggered me to think back on my previous decision on buying a Persona back in 2016. Now at that time, I had just married my wife. At that time, I was driving my Waja, she was driving her Saga, which has now been passed to my sister-in-law. So then, around that, I think it was November or something like that, that time Proton invited me for a media drive to the Persona. I went for the media drive and I drove the car. I was like, you know, and then my overall impression is that, hey, it's not bad. You know, it comes with reverse camera. It had keyless entry, decently spacious interior. And from my wife's vantage point, where she had a Saga 1.3, the Persona represented a reasonable upgrade for her. So I brought her to the showroom, let her test drive the car, and she was actually happy with the car. And yeah, and then we settled on, we bought the Persona. Okay guys, so from the outside, this latest facelift of the Persona really looks broadly familiar to the one that I had before. Okay, but of course they've refined the details. So if you look at it up close, this actually, you can see quite a bit of improvements from my previous car to the one you see here. Firstly, the wheels, new design, and they've upsized it to 16s. Now, of course, there are pros and cons when you upsize the wheels, okay? You sacrifice a bit of fuel efficiency, you sacrifice a bit of ride comfort, but the trade-off here is that now, with this new 16-inch wheels, the car visually from the side looks a lot better balanced. The old 15 inches, well, yes, you can buy cheaper tires, the ride comfort is better, but the visual look of those wheels is that they look a bit too small for this car's body. And fact of the matter is, this Persona, relative to its footprint, is actually a rather tall car. So you need bigger wheels to balance out that proportion. And you get better tires as well. Goodyear Assurance Triple Max 2. I remember one of the big weaknesses of the 2016 Persona was Proton's selection of OEM tires at that time. Those on my car were, well, basically they were wheel spinning after like 10,000 kilometers on the clock. So this Triple Max 2 definitely is a much better tire choice than the one that came before. Now you come to the front, they have changed, of course, the previous halogen reflector headlamps. Now you've got LEDs, so not only does it look more upmarket, you get far better illumination at night. You get daytime running lights as well. They have also integrated the Proton infinite weave pattern here. So a very good job actually for Proton, because they integrated a new styling language that was introduced after the Persona was launched, you know, into something that was not designed for that in the first place. So the overall integration of a new styling language into this facelift actually, I would say, is rather well executed. The headlights also, you can see there are little details here, the Proton logo here on the cover, then there's the LED wording there, there's a Proton wording there as well. And the parking sensor is integrated to this plastic piece here. It's a much nicer overall appearance, a much neater overall front end design. Okay, now you come to the back. So firstly, we see there is the ducktail spoiler that's now finished in gloss black. My car also had a ducktail spoiler, but it was not finished in gloss black lah. It was finished in body color. This tail lights is the same tail lights, but it has a smoked effect on it right now. Now the thing with the Persona is that one of the biggest changes cosmetically, also the most significant change to the Persona cosmetically, is actually the rear. Because you see, when Proton first launched the Persona, remember that it was basically a sedan version of the Iris, and the Iris platform was not designed with a sedan body in mind. So when Proton tacked a boot onto the Iris, the Persona resulted in a bit of rather awkward proportions. But with this facelift, they have fixed it. So what they have done, okay, is that they have increased the unpainted area of the rear diffuser treatment. I think they've also lifted the rear bumper a bit more, and the painted area of the bumper, the height of the painted area is reduced. So what they have done is that they have reduced the visual height of the rear, and as a result, the rear proportions of the car now look much better balanced and much more pleasant to the eye. Okay, and much better resolved than before. So we open to the boot. Okay, now this is I have to say, this is one of the key strengths of the Persona, this large boot. All right, I can testify from personal experience. There was a trip, 1 week trip, me, my wife, my mother, my daughter, luggage for 7 days to Australia. The Persona took it like a champ. All right, fit in nicely. My sister-in-law drove the 4 of us to the airport, and that time also we were even managed to able to fit 4 adults in the car and a child seat. All right, so here inside, now of course Proton didn't make significant changes to the architecture of the Persona's interior, but they have refined the material usage. So you see here, all right, this leather quality also is also much improved from the one I have before. It feels more supple. And one thing about the Persona is that the seats, the rear seats of the Persona really is a strong point. Okay, good lean angle, good seat length. So when I sit inside this, okay, I've got full support of my thighs. The rear seats are excellent, excellent. We come to the front now. Okay, so they have made some changes to the front. Okay, now I have deliberately left my breakfast in here just to show you guys the utility factor of this tray, of this center console. So they have made big changes here. They have raised the center console. Okay, so now this whole area has become storage. So this whole tray here, you have these ridges here. So you can use this as a cup holder, or you can just use this to store your things. This tray here also as well accommodates your smartphone. And here now they've finally added an armrest, so you can, there's also a box inside here as well. So overall, I would say this new center console is a fabulous effort from Proton. It really makes the interior, this whole center area, feel significantly more upmarket than the one before. Here you have the lock and unlock button, very conveniently placed at the center, so it's accessible to both the driver and front passenger. So a big improvement, of course, is this screen. My 2016 Persona, well, the screen was really one of the weak points of the car. Well, it was laggy, it kept crashing, so we didn't have a very pleasant experience using the screen. Now, firstly, you have reverse camera. This was there before, but now there's also even cornering lines. So when you turn the steering, the guide lines turn along with it. That's cool. So, well, you have sat nav, okay, you have radio, you have all these apps, Jukes Music, phone, media, weather, no Android Auto, no Apple CarPlay, but you have QD Link, which is for you to, which is, well, basically their version of screen mirroring. And more importantly, the climate control is now integrated with the infotainment system. So you can control the fan speed or the aircon either from here, from the touchscreen, or you can, hi Proton,
What's up?
reduce fan speed.
Alright, it is going down to speed.
Hi Proton,
I'm listening.
window down.
Opening front row.
Hi Proton,
I'm listening.
window up.
Alright, closed.
Now, in the original Persona, or the Iris for that matter, the climate control power window was standalone features. So they have taken the effort to integrate these two items to the infotainment system to enable this control, and that is a praiseworthy effort which they undertook to improve the overall quality perception and value perception of this car. All right, now also here, this instrument cluster is from a 2019 facelift, but still coming from the 2016 car, you can see that the overall presentation looks more upmarket, and now you've got a color screen as well. The 2016 car had a TFT, had a monochrome screen. This one is a color screen, so you've got all these trip computer functions presented to you in a more vibrant appearance. All right, so I have to confess, the last about 2 years since I parted ways with the car, one of the things that I missed most about the Persona is really its nimble and agile handling in tight corners. When you want a car to navigate the congested traffic of downtown KL, of PJ, of Bangsa, Old Klang Road, all right, you want a car that allows you to go zop, 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 squeeze through the tight corners. The Persona actually does it better than most, because it is, at the end of the day, a compact car with a well-tuned suspension, a well-tuned power steering. Okay, now remember, this power steering system that we see here in the Persona is the one that is carried over from the Iris, and that was Proton's first in-house attempt at an electric power steering system. So the Persona is a very fun, very agile, very stress-free car to drive. It's perfect for city driving. You see, in 3 years of owning that car, I have come to know exactly what are the circumstances that would trigger, you know, a jerky upshift or downshift in a traffic jam. You know, how exactly to modulate the throttle and brakes to trigger that jerk and how to avoid it. But this time around with this car, one of the things I noticed is that, you know, despite me driving it like a torque converter automatic, and which is what that's how most drivers behave, the transmission actually coped admirably with my throttle inputs, and I found the overall smoothness of the transmission to be rather satisfactory, especially with its creep behavior. Now, creeping is something that, you know, we do it regularly with a torque converter auto. Creeping means that when you are in a traffic jam, the car in front inch forward, you release the brake pedal a little with the transmission in D and let the car inch forward the same. With a torque converter auto, that is a very easy thing to do. But in a clutch-based transmission, whether it's a CVT or a DCT, all right, the computer can sometimes struggle to determine how much pressure to apply on the clutch plate, or how much slip to allow the clutch packs, so that your car can inch forward smoothly without stalling. So the first Persona, which is the one that I had, struggled with that. This one does not, and that, you know, makes the whole driving experience a lot more pleasant. Or other aspects of the Persona's driving experience, well, ride and handling remains top-notch. Okay, you can steer this car around at speed with fantastic amount of confidence. So the chassis balance, it remains top-notch. There is that increased firmness in the ride because of the enlarged wheel size, but not significant to affect overall ride comfort. On the performance front, Proton didn't enhance the outputs of this engine, but they didn't need to, because the improvements to the tuning of the CVT overall has made the car feel livelier, feels more ready and more eager and raring to accelerate, particularly from takeoff. And even response to kick down inputs is tremendously improved. Now, one aspect of the Persona's CVT logic that was pretty underrated from before, and I wish to highlight, was that the great logic control, which means that, you know, the car's ability to detect that you are going down a slope and accordingly reduce the gear ratio to give you engine braking and better control, was fantastic. It was the calibration was spot on, even with the first Persona, and now here in this one it remains there. So even if you don't move the selector to S, when you go down a slope in this one, you can pretty much do it without needing to manually input anything to the transmission, which is great. Now, of course, if you're not a keen driver, there are still other things in this car to appreciate. The better resolved styling, the improved overall quality inside and outside the car. I'll tell this, the switchgear quality, I can tell you, definitely feels more solid than my old car. So you see, the thing is this, 5 years ago when I bought the Persona, at that time 60,000 ringgit, if you compare that with, say, a brand new City or Vios of that time, you spend 80k, 90k to get a top spec Vios and City. Yes, you get an appreciably better car, and if you are able to afford that, that perhaps is a better choice. But if at that time you are struggling to reach the 70k budget for the lower spec City, Vios and Almera, the Persona is actually the wiser option, because the thing is that you get better features and a not significantly inferior car. But today, 5 years on, with the improvements that Proton has made to the Persona, all right, what has happened is that the price level, well, it has come down slightly. Okay, this new Persona here is cheaper than the one that I bought. That's one, but it is now this much better. All right, that even if you could put this next to a top spec City, top spec Vios, you struggle now to justify how is it that, you know, a range-topping Japanese B segment car can command that much of a premium over the Persona anymore, because now because what Proton has done here with the Persona is that they have preserved the price point, but they have improved the quality, they have improved the value proposition, and basically they have ironed out all the rough edges that were in the first edition of the car. And I would say this much: if Proton had built my old Persona to the standards of this one, well, it would have been a much more difficult decision to sell it.